Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championship, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel, and hopefully you're doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, whether you live in the States or internationally, I hope you're doing well for yourself during a time of major uncertainty. But one thing that is definitely certain is the fact that we do have UFC shows happening right now. Things are going on pace right now. Last Saturday was a UFC on ESPN event, which is Blaydes versus Alexander Volkov. It was a very interesting card here, looking from top to bottom here. We got Blaydes defeating Alexander Volkov by decision after 5 rounds of action. We have Josh Emmett defeating Shane Burgos. We got Raquel Pennington defeating Marion Reneau by decision. Most of these fights pretty much ended by decision, with the exception being Jim Miller tapping out Roosevelt Roberts. That was an incredible performance. I would say the performance of the night goes towards Jim Miller in his submission victory over Roosevelt Roberts. We also have Belal Muhammad against Lyman Good. That fight, to me, was the fight of the night. If there's any one fight you should go look out for this event, it should be Belal Muhammad against Lyman Good. That, to me, was fight of the night. And then we got Clay Guida losing to Bobby Green via decision after 3 rounds of action. TC Torres winning by decision after 3 rounds of action. Marc-Andre Briot having only the third KO victory. Technically third KO victory. Against Oscar Persosa at round 2, 4 minutes 50 seconds in via KO/TKO. We have Courtney Casey losing to Jillian Robertson. That, to me, was kind of a shocking victory. That's no disrespect to Jillian Robertson, but I thought it would be a lot more of a closer fight, in my opinion. We got Justin James defeating Frank Camacho. Lauren Murphy defeating Roxanne Modafferi. Sad for me, I do not want to see Roxanne Modafferi lose. She happens to be one of my more favorite fighters in the entire UFC. Like, we got men and women who are trying their best to portray themselves as these, like, baddest people on earth, which they kind of are. They're not wrong in that, but Roxanne Modafferi is a very different fighter in terms of her persona, so it's sad for me to see her lose. I think right now she's had more losses than she has wins in the UFC, but she's still within the top 10 rankings. She's obviously coming out of the top 5. She was top 5. I think Lauren Murphy was number 8 rank, and so we can see Lauren Murphy now sliding her way into the top 5 rankings for the women's fight division, which is incredibly good for her. So I'm happy for Lauren Murphy. And then we have the controversial finish here with Austin Hubbard versus Max Roshkov. People are talking about it, which I am really surprised about. And so, to those who don't know, round 1, Daniel Cormier and El Helwani talked about this. So round 1, it was a back and forth fight. Some people thought that Max should have won the first round. But the overwhelming majority, including myself, including Cormier, including El Helwani, thought that Austin Hubbard won the first round, which he did. He definitively won the first round, in my personal viewpoint. And in the second round, it was a 10-8. I know there's a lot of issues going on with the judges being like, okay, really, was it 10-8? Was it 10-9? How do you gauge the difference between a 10-8 and 10-9 round? But without a doubt, Austin Hubbard was beating down on Max in round 2. There's no doubt about that. No arguing who won the second round. First round, small vocal minority will say Max won that. But in reality, if you just go by the numbers and even by the eye test, you could say that Austin Hubbard won the first round. Second round, unanimously, Austin Hubbard won. Now, was it 10-9 or 10-8? Well, does it really matter? I'm being honest, does it really matter? Because the fight pretty much got called off. Because in between rounds here, the fight got thrown off because Max went on... we had somebody, not the referee, check up on Max, and he asked, hey Max, do you still want to participate in the fight? Do you want to continue on? And Max said no. So Austin Hubbard ended up winning the fight here, and now there's controversy about that, and it's so strange. It's very strange here because it's happened in the past multiple times where we see fighters who get dominated, or who have been dominated, or just go to their cornerman or tell somebody, "Hey, I'm not in this fight. I know I'm going to lose this fight. I'm not doing well for myself. I'm not in it to win it." It's happened in a recent women's fight, and it happened during Anthony Smith fight. The strange part about this is there's a lot of controversy that happened during the Anthony Smith fight against Glover Teixeira. For those of you who are not aware of the issue here, Glover Teixeira was getting bodied. He was getting destroyed by Glover Teixeira. And then Smith came to the cornerman and said, "Oh man, dude, I'm doing awful. I'm doing terrible." Like, he was giving his cornerman hints and cues, being like, "Hey, call the fight off. I myself am not going to call the fight off because I have too much pride for myself. But please call the fight off because I'm not doing well." And Anthony Smith was being destroyed there. Everybody was saying, "Oh, how awful it was for Anthony Smith's cornerman to go tell Anthony to go keep on fighting." Everyone says that. Everyone's in agreement that it's not Anthony Smith's fault that he lost the fight against Glover Teixeira. It was mostly his cornerman's fault because they gave him poor strategy, and also and they threw him out there when he wasn't even ruling the fight. The fight should have ended in the 4th round, but instead, Glover Teixeira had the opportunity to go wallop on him for an extra couple minutes. For all we know, which could have taken possibly years off Anthony Smith's career. So the media, Cormier, El-Hawani, Chael Sonnen, they're all saying what a disgusting thing it was for Smith's cornerman not to throw in the towel when his mindset was off. If a fighter, this is according to them, if a fighter says that they don't want to fight, then at that moment the cornerman should throw the towel in, because if they don't have the confidence to go fight out there, there's no point in them fighting. And now, about a couple months later down the future here, we have Austin Hubbard versus Max Roshikov. Sorry if I can't say his name correctly. But Max says, "You know what? I can't fight." And now we're hearing from Cormier's quote-unquote resources here, from his sources, that there's controversy here in the sense that Max is the type of fighter that has to be motivated and to continue fighting, and he said the fight was 1-1. I'm in heavy disagreement of that. The fight was definitely not 1-1. Judges did not score the fight. It doesn't matter what you thought the fight was. It doesn't matter if you thought he won the first round. Your opinion doesn't matter. The judges' opinions are the one that matter. And so when Dan Cormier is like, "Okay, you know what? The fight should have kept going on because Max is the type of personality where he's going to give up on himself, and his cornermen have to be the ones who have to motivate him." No. You can't just do that. You really can't. In the sports business, it's either you show up or you don't. If you don't show up, you can throw in the towel. Dana White has said it before multiple times. If you don't want to fight, then don't fight. Now, he had 5-day notice of doing this. And the 5-day notice thing, it's become a regular common thing right now in the UFC because these fight cards are being made up pretty much on the spot, and fighters have less than a month's prep time to prep up against their matchup here. And considering the fact that gyms are closed right now, some gyms are open, but we got saunas and steam rooms and swimming pools, and some gyms still implementing some social distancing. It's very hard right now for a fighter to go and maintain weight or to make weight, because if they don't make weight, then they lose pretty much 25% of their fight purse, and the fight they're going into isn't really going to amount to much in terms of money. And the money they're making isn't even all that well. So I don't get why there's controversy in Hubbard versus Max. I don't, especially for the beginning fight of the prelims. I think it's overblown. That's how I view it. But before I talk about the UFC on ESPN events, the UFC right now is getting a lot of flack right now. It's getting a lot of flack in the sense that there's a hashtag going on, like Joe Silva stories. I talked about this, I think, last week. But Brendan Schaub happens to be in the front over here when discussing, Joe Silva. Brendan Schaub has said that Joe Silva is like 5'1" little guy who's power hungry and he's taking advantage of these fighters. And he's disrespectful to the fighters. He's an awful person to work with. That's what Brendan Schaub's assessment really is. And not just him, other fighters are going on talking about this. They're talking about how Joe Silva is a bad promoter. He's a bad match booker, and he's not making the fighters feel comfortable fighting for the organization. And I immediately thought about this. I immediately thought about Dana White when he was asked about money again being a huge issue for the UFC. And here's what really blew my mind. Dana White says, "Guess what? The fight business is not a career. Being a mixed martial artist is not a career. Being a professional fighter is not a career. It is an opportunity. You take what it's given, and you make the most out of it." That just blows my mind right there. Because in every single sporting organization out there in the world, every single one, even poker, even like cricket, they'll say that being that type of athlete, that's a career. It's a short career. A career doesn't have to be you do this for the rest of your life. No, they don't. We have more. That's equivalent of being a boxing manager. That's equivalent of being a boxing manager, and then you gave up after 3 years, and then going on and saying, "Oh, that wasn't me being a boxing manager for 3 years. That wasn't a career, because that job I did was just about 3 years, so it didn't really matter much." No, being a mix, it is a career. You know why it is a career? Because we've got people whose entire identities and success stems from their career as an MMA fighter, from Conor McGregor to Ronda Rousey to John Jones. If you ask every single athlete, whether it be LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, can you imagine someone telling them, "Hey, being a professional football player, making $20 million a year, that is not a career, that's an opportunity"? It's so strange that the combat sports, the rule of mixed martial arts, saying boxing, has these weird perceptions of their own sports. It's so strange. Because here's the fight game is temporary. We can all accept that. Nobody's going to go on fighting for their entire life. The same thing as we said about basketball players. Can you imagine like a boss or an owner telling LeBron James, "Hey, here's $500,000. Go there, dribble the basketball, and make us a whole lot of money. Because guess what? This is not a career. This is an opportunity. So you can't renegotiate." You know what LeBron would do? LeBron would try to get you fired. He would pretty much try to ruin your career. He would try to ruin your identity to the public here. It astounds me. It astounds me how this is still going on. It really does. The way how I view it right now with Jorge Masvidal, and yes, Dana White is kind of right in the sense that we have John Jones and Jorge Masvidal, yes, they just accepted their new contract. And then goes on to say, well, guess what? If they believe that they should deserve this amount of money, if they believe they should deserve to go get X amount of money, then they shouldn't have signed that contract and just, renegotiated better. And then Brendan Schaub had a rebuttal about this, where it goes on to say, well, there's not really a negotiation process happening. It's more of an ultimatum. He didn't say the words ultimatum, but he was trying to look for the word ultimatum. But according to Brendan Schaub and other fighters, they go on to say, hey, it's not really a negotiation process when discussing money and fights. It's more about them like pigeonholing you into having to accept X amount of money, or you get let go. It's astounding. It really is. In that UFC is supposed to be this great, large in life. It's supposed to be this amazing sports organization, but yet your athletes aren't paid like they're great athletes. And then, of course, you have Dana White or Joe Silva say, well, this job isn't really a career. It's an opportunity. I want to know how they would... if you were to place Dana White and like Joe Silva, like people with that personality, and have them try to run a professional organization, have them try to run the Dallas Cowboys or the New York Knicks or the LA Lakers, things would be so much different on how they try to negotiate or how they try to think about athletes or how the media looks at them. Because in the world of mixed martial arts, they can get away with things that they can't get away with other organizations. And there should be a lot more athletes, a lot more unifying athletes who are willing to work alongside each other instead of being catty for once on Twitter. Then maybe fighter negotiations, fighter relationships wouldn't be as toxic. Chael Sonnen says you need to try to be safe and smart in the fight game. But note, you don't have to do that. You can take the risk. But then again, it's a risk. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So we're talking about Joe Silva and fighter economics yet again. I talked about how Dana White sees his fighters more so as opportunists, more than actual people who are trying to go for a career in mixed martial arts. Because apparently, according to Joe Silva and members of the UFC brass, if you are a fighter in the UFC, that's not a career for you. There is no career as a mixed martial artist in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. No, you're just a person who has an opportunity to go make a whole lot of money. It's just an opportunity, it's not a career. I find that very strange because that really isn't the case for a whole lot of fighters out there. But I digress. Let's talk about UFC on ESPN with Curtis Blaydes versus Alexander Volkov being the main event here. Curtis Blaydes ended up defeating Alexander Volkov via decision after 5 rounds of action via unanimous decision. And the fight pretty much went exactly how me and a whole lot of people predicted when it comes to Curtis Blaydes against Alexander Volkov, in the sense that it really was, you got the striker, you got a grappler, the striker has little to no grappling game. I scratched that. Volkov has a grappling game. He does. He really does. It just, his grappling game is so much lower than Curtis Blaydes. And Curtis Blaydes, coming to this fight, I think he is top 3. He's top 3 or top 5 all time in takedowns at the heavyweight division. And he's one of the best, if not the best, ground and pound wrestlers in the heavyweight division, without doubt about that. So Curtis Blaydes is coming into fight against Alexander Volkov, and everyone predicted, all right, Blaydes is gonna go, he's gonna run in there, and he's gonna go for a double leg takedown here. Now, I was afraid that Curtis Blaydes was gonna go try toe to toe and try to stand up against Alexander Volkov, which would have been a really very bad idea, because when you look at Curtis Blaydes' most recent fights, he has a tendency of being very reliant on a striking game. And that's not me disrespecting his striking game. His striking game is really good. It just, his striking game has a very low ceiling. It's a very low ceiling. It's a higher floor, low ceiling. And if I were to match him up against, even Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, Francis Ngannou, Alexander Volkov in the striking exchanges, I would place my money on the other fighter not named Curtis Blaydes. And the reason for that is because as good as Curtis Blaydes is in his striking ability and his punching power, I just say that he has a very underrated wrestling grappling game. When he fought against Francis Ngannou, I thought, okay, so Curtis, here's the problem. When he got into the fight against Francis Ngannou, he was smoking people through the stand-up. He was going toe-to-toe with the guys the likes of, Alistair Overeem, which is insane. And so now Curtis Blaydes, he defeats Alistair Overeem. Now he thinks he's a knockout artist. Then he matches up against Francis Ngannou twice. and things don't work out well for him. And a small part of him still thinks like, okay, maybe I am still a really good striking artist. I was unlucky that moment. And so in his fight against Alexander Volkov, I am happy. I am happy that he chose to, okay, I'm a tune into my wrestling game here because I know I'm a great wrestler. I'm going to go grapple with Alexander Volkov, and I'll see what happens. And you know, guess what? He did. Volkov had no answer for Curtis Blaydes' game. The only time where I really felt Volkov really was having his best opportune time to go defeat Curtis Blaydes was nearing the end of the fourth and kind of throughout the fifth round. I say I give the last round towards Alexander Volkov. I really do. And it's because Curtis Blaydes pretty much gassed himself out by then. Curtis Blaydes has a great tank. The dude is a cardio machine out there. He went there full throttle on Volkov, but it was very obvious when he started gassing out because you can tell by the post-fight interview, he was so dead in his breath. He could barely breathe. You'd hear like someone giving an interview, like, "Hey, Curtis Blaydes, telling me about that fight. How it went for you?" And you hear Curtis Blaydes be like, "That was a tough fight. It's great." Ooh, like he sounded so gassed. He looked very gassed. He looked way out of it. Here's the thing: if Blaydes and Alexander Volkov after that fight, even though Blaydes won that fight, if those two were to have a marathon or to have a 10-minute sprint, who would win it on a race? Without a doubt, it would be Alexander Volkov. Now, once again, this isn't to shy away from how good of a performance Volkov had. He had a great performance. It just he didn't have the skills and tools that Curtis Blaydes had. He didn't have the advantages that Curtis Blaydes has in grappling. I am really happy that Blaydes was able to go pressure someone as lengthy as Volkov, because Volkov was significantly much more larger than Blaydes here, and he was able to close in the distance. A lot of like grappler versus striker battles involve the striker trying to keep away the grappler for the most part, and the way how the striker wins is because they pressure the grappler too much in their defensive boxing, in their counterfighting, that they end up making the grappler very uncomfortable and making them afraid to go shoot for a takedown or for a double leg or single leg. But instead, though, it was ring and ring. Curtis Blaydes, no fear, dives right in front of Alexander Volkov's face, tries to shoot in for a takedown, and he gets it. That's what I love about Curtis Blaydes, even though he fights very recklessly. If you look at his Ngannou fights, he does fight recklessly. And even to an extent, like the beginning portion of his fight against Overeem, Curtis Blaydes fights very reckless, which is both a good and a bad thing for him. It really is. Because he came in very recklessly towards Volkov, who is a really great striker, one of the best strikers in the entire heavyweight division. And things could have turned out really bad for him. He could have been one uppercut away from losing. But no, it didn't turn out that way. Instead, we had Curtis Blaydes having no fear, taking whatever punishment he can from Volkov, because Volkov was definitely giving him some hard-landed punches. He definitely was. It wasn't like Curtis Blaydes was avoiding everything he can and like went for a smart takedown. He didn't. Curtis Blaydes went, okay, I'll just dive in there, go for a takedown. If I get hit, if I get tagged, I'm just going to take it. I am 100% committed to this takedown. And he was able to do so. So congratulations there for Curtis Blaydes for not falling into the trap of being extra precautious and extra safe to Volkov's reach. He was able to pressure him. So yeah, good job right there. Thank you, Curtis Blaydes and Alexander Volkov, for having a great performance there. And I'm happy for that. Now let's look at the heavyweight rankings here. So it is expected that we are going to see Stipe Miocic against Daniel Cormier coming up August 15, 2020. Where is the location going to be at? It's not going to be at Fight Island, though. That's the sad part. It could potentially be. But it'll be Miocic versus Daniel Cormier. Winner of that fight will potentially fight against Francis Ngannou. And here's the strange thing. Even though Stipe Miocic and Cormier is the expected fight coming August, I'm hearing some rumors out there that this fight may or may not happen because there's like contract negotiations happening. I do know that Stipe Miocic has to be one of the more underpaid fighters, because if you look at his track record, the guy is obviously the greatest UFC heavyweight champion of all time, without a doubt about that. But he's also one of the more underpaid fighters here. And when I look at the rankings here, Stipe Miocic being, the champion, then we got Daniel Cormier, Francis Ngannou. Based off rumors, it is noted that Francis Ngannou might serve as a replacement fighter, just in case things go eerie between Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier in terms of contract negotiations, or a fighter pulls out, or an injury. And then right under Ngannou is Curtis Blaydes. The problem with Curtis Blaydes right now is that he's kind of stuck in this weird there's no way Dana White or any fight booker can book a Curtis Blaydes versus Ngannou fight again. It shouldn't happen. It's pretty much been proven that Ngannou has Curtis Blaydes' number, and Dana White is not a fan of any fighter having to fight anybody the third time if they've been dominated twice. So I don't really see Curtis Blaydes now. He's just playing the waiting game. He'll sadly be stuck at the number 3 ranked fighter in terms of the rankings for the heavyweight division until something happens here. I don't expect Curtis Blaydes. If Curtis Blaydes can go undefeated for the next year to year and a half, then he'll get a title fight. But as of this moment, his reputation, credibility is much more lower compared to Miocic, Cormier, and Ngannou. Cormier has said that he's thinking about retirement after the Stipe Miocic fight. Then again, I'm unsure. We've heard Cormier talks about retirement all the time. It feels like he for sure is certain that his fight against Miocic will be his last one. But then again, we don't know what the status is for Cormier. Things could change at any moment. We're unsure. The world of mixed martial arts is very unpredictable. But with Curtis Blaydes, though, with fighters like Rozenstruik, Alistair Overeem, Junior Dos Santos, Derek Lewis, Alexander Volkov, and Walteris, Alexei Oleinik, Fabricio Verdum, Curtis Blaydes has to be pretty much trapped at the number 4, number 3 ranking, and he has to wait until he has to go fight all the rest of these fighters. So coming up after in the same card that we're gonna have Stipe Miocic against Daniel Cormier, we're also gonna have Daniel Rozenstruik against Junior Dos Santos. And that fight, to me, I am personally more excited about as a fight. I think that fight could potentially be a show stealer, be fight of the night. Rozenstruik versus Junior Dos Santos. So Junior Dos Santos is coming in as the number 7th ranked fighter. He's lost twice. He's lost to Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blaydes. And then we have Rozenstruik here, who just recently lost to a very, very scary Francis Ngannou. This is a must-win for both fighters right now, because whoever loses that fight will possibly fight against Alistair Overeem. Alistair Overeem being number 6 ranked. So coming up on August 15, we're going to have Cormier versus Stipe Miocic, and also Rozenstruik versus Junior Dos Santos. Who's going to win the fight? It's a real toss-up. If Rozenstruik just had a much more better performance against Ngannou, I would have, if it was Rozenstruik after his victory over Overeem against Junior Dos Santos, I would easily throw my money on Rozenstruik. But after that performance against Ngannou, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of second-guessing right now. Rozenstruik pretty much had that shield of invulnerability up until that fight, and I don't know how that loss psychologically dealt with him, because it became a highlight reel. If you type up Rozenstruik's name, first thing that's going to pop up is Francis Ngannou throwing out these 3 very ugly-looking hooks and knocking him out. And then we have Derek Lewis, who's pretty much stuck as a gatekeeper near the top 10 rankings. Alexander Volkov, Augusto Sakai. Augusto Sakai is a dark horse in the division. Almost just throwing out there right now. Yes, his victories over Blagoy Ivanov wasn't all that impressive, to be honest with you. The Ivanov versus Sakai fight was kind of a snooze fest, and in my personal opinion, the fight of that, it was the most boring fight of the night. But then again, if I were to say Sakai versus Volkov or Sakai versus Derek Lewis, don't be surprised if Sakai makes his way up in the rankings in the next year and a half from now. He's also fairly young. He also has great size in the heavyweight division, surprisingly. So right now, things are kind of stagnant right now in the heavyweight division. We also have Alexei Oleinik versus Derek Lewis. Oh man, this is going to be a real fun one. Who's going to win that fight? I really don't know. That fight could really go either way. I got to go for Alexei Oleinik in that matchup. They're going to be fighting the week before the Rozenstruik Dos Santos fight and then Stipe Miocic and Cormier fight. So the week before that, we're gonna have Derek Lewis versus Alexei Oleinik. Obviously, Alexei Oleinik, his striking is kind of questionable, and I'm saying that with him, defeating Fabricio Verdum. But Fabricio Verdum, as of right now, the current version of Fabricio Verdum we see right now is pretty much washed up. I'm sorry to say that Fabricio Verdum is an all-time great. One of the all-time greatest ever. At one point, we could have said he was the GOAT of the heavyweight division. But right now, the version we see of Fabricio Verdum, currently, no, I don't see him being all that special. We also have Cyril Gain against Shamil Agapragov. I'm not really sure if I'm butchering the name incorrectly there. That's also a really close one, but I gotta put my money on Trill, just because for Shamil, I see a lot of like Blagoy Ivanov in that. And then, oh my gosh, so we got Ilir Latifi. He was really going up in the rankings at one point, but these things are not haven't been going well for him recently. He was doing really well for himself in the heavyweight division up until 2 years ago. Sadly, things are not going well. But right now in the heavyweight division, things are being a little bit more stagnant. We are unclear. We are not sure. We are unclear of what will be the future of the heavyweight division upon Miocic or Cormier winning. My guess right now is no matter what, Francis Ngannou's next. There's not going to be some fourth fight in the trilogy here between Cormier and Miocic. It's being rumored out there that if Cormier, even if he were to win, he would not go and defend the belt. He would go retire as champion, which makes all the sense in the role for Cormier. And also, Cormier has talked about extensively how it's been getting increasingly difficult for him to sign up on fights and agree to negotiations. He's still a company man, saying, the UFC is like feeding me, it's helping me out, it's providing me many opportunities, not a career, strangely enough. But Cormier has talked about how it's been difficult for him to really get down to the money brass of things. And I think he's really settled as being a commentator or a fight analyst. Stipe Miocic, here's the thing, I would be more excited for a Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou rematch than I would be for a Cormier versus Ngannou rematch. Even though both Miocic and Cormier would fight Ngannou pretty much the exact same way, and that you're going immediately for the double leg takedown, I think Ngannou would have a much more better performance in his second bout against Miocic than he would against Cormier. That's what I firmly believe in. Because Cormier is just a better wrestler than Stipe Miocic, but I think it'd be a lot more of fun fights, a lot more of an exciting fight, and I think we're going to see the best version of Francis Ngannou we've ever seen if you're to be matched up against Stipe Miocic. You're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right after the short break here.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. So I just discussed Curtis Blaydes versus Alexander Volkov at UFC on ESPN. They were the main events which Curtis Blaydes won. One fighter that really stood out was Josh Emmett, and is being reported in by BloodyElbow.com that Josh Emmett suffered a complete ACL tear in a thrilling UFC Vegas 3 win over Shane Burgos. One of the best fights of the entire night, arguably the best fight of the night. UFC featherweight contender Josh Emmett picked up a tremendous victory over Shane Burgos in one of the best fights of 2020, but it came at a cost. Emmett's left leg buckled noticeably just seconds into last Saturday's UFC Vegas 3 co-main event, which he later described in the post-fight interview as a possible ACL tear. He was still able to fire off his vaunted power punches and twice put Burgos down in the final round to come away with the unanimous decision victory. I recommend you guys watch the fight again for Josh Emmett. As it turns out, Emmett, who is 15-2, by the way, here's the thing. Emmett came to the fight as a huge underdog. That's the weird part about it. He was, I think, 7 years older than his counterparts, and he was expected to lose, which is so strange because he's only 15-2. He's already been placed as a journeyman, even though, if you look at his career, he really isn't a journeyman yet. So Emmett, he did tear his ACL and had some other surgeries too, including a sprained MCL and damaged cartilage. He outlined everything on Twitter late Monday afternoon. Josh Emmett, most people would have quit or looked away. I will never quit. This is coming in from Josh Emmett's Twitter. 1. Complete ACL tear. 2. MCL sprain with partial tearing. 3. Baker's cyst rupture. 4. Focal impact fracture of femur on the lateral. 5. Trundle defect, cartilage, on tibia laterally matching impact area. In other words, Josh Emmett is insanely tough, and it only adds to how impressive his win was. On the downside, the ACL tear by itself obviously means there's no way Emmett returns anytime soon, which is the one negative for a man who's on a currently 3-fight win streak and deservedly among the elite of the talent-rich featherweight division. Emmett's manager, Jennifer Goldstein, told MMA Fighting that should Josh elect for surgery, he could be sidelined for 9 months. Although it's possible, we don't need to go that route. This is Emmett's first fight of his new contract, which saw him at $152,000. He got $76K in as his base money, and additional money coming in for Fight Night bonus. So congratulations, Emmett. You made a whole lot of money. You made a lot of money. You made more money than people have made years working for the UFC, to be honest with you. So I am happy for Emmett in that case, that he was able to bank. And listen, this is a new contract. And so if you were to fight again, even with the ACL tag, he'd be making $75K. And if you were to win his fights, he'd make double that. So really, I am happy for Josh Emmett's contract. You know, with everyone complaining about their contract and money issues, Josh Emmett, man, he was able to make the money. Sadly, he won't be competing or will try to make that money in the next year. ACL tears are no big deal. There are people's careers who've drastically changed and they never come back fighting ever again, or no, never come back competing at a high level in a sport through ACL tears, whether it be football or basketball. And Josh Emmett, he's in the late end of his 30s. So it's not really good for him to have an injury this late in his career. But I'm happy that he was able to bank off $152K. At least something's good is happening to him in the year of 2020. Hey, you guys remember Anthony Rumble Johnson? When was he going to come back? I remember Anthony Rumble Johnson became that guy who was scarily good and could potentially defeat John Jones into a guy who retired. And you see him on like Twitter, Instagram, or any of your social media feeds, and that dude is jacked. I think he walked around at 330 pounds once, which is insane because at one point he was a welterweight. He was a welterweight competing at 185. Then he became 330 pounds, and then his fighting weight was 205, even the guy obviously belonged as heavyweight. And now there has been rumors going around that Anthony Johnson would be making a return, but I haven't heard any recent news yet, and let's figure out why. It is coming in from BloodyElbow.com. Dana White says Anthony Rumble Johnson just sort of disappeared. You know what? There was talk about it for a minute, and then it all stopped, and he sort of disappeared again. What happened to Anthony Johnson? Where did he go? The former UFC light heavyweight title contender was looking to make a comeback earlier this year, but according to Dana White, he just sort of disappeared. This is coming from Dana White himself. You know what? There was talk about it for a minute, and then all stopped, and he sort of disappeared again, White said to Rumble at UFC on ESPN 11 post-fight press conference. Listen, it is good because if you don't want to fight and you walked away the first time, you're coming back for what? What are you coming back for? If it's just a payday, he's a smart kid. He can go do a lot of other things, man. This is a young man's game. Young man's game? Josh Emmett. These up-and-coming kids are savages. Look at Josh Emmett. Like, Josh Emmett isn't... I don't want to put him that young. And Shane Burgos, both of those guys looking for credit and respect that they deserve. Those are the type of dudes you're going to like. This is a young man's game. Daniel Cormier? Yoel Romero? I don't know. They've been champions in their 40s. I don't know. Is it really a young man's game? Is it really? Like, Stipe Miocic, I think, was in his like mid to late 30s. Come on. Anthony Johnson has last fought at UFC 210 back in 2017, where he submitted by then light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier. The 36-year-old announced his retirement in the post-fight interview. So he's about 39 years old. He might be making a comeback at the age of 40. Yeah, like, young man's game. Have you seen your champions? Young man's... Like, Dominic Cruz is young, but the guy he's been in this game for a long, long time. And he just had a title fight. Uriah Faber, like, that guy's not a young squirrel also. Young man's game? Yeah, right. Sure, why not? And so this is now coming in from MMAfighting.com that UFC on ESPN 12 finalized with 11 fights, start time, and broadcast details confirmed. The card for UFC on ESPN 12 has been finalized with lightweights Dustin Porier and Dan Hooker squaring off in the main event. That could be a potential fight of the year candidate. I'm being honest right there. That's a really, really good fight. On Monday, the promotion announced a full card with some late additions due to injuries and other changes. Porier makes his return to action after falling to lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov this past September. Hooker seeks his 4th straight win with hopes to move into the title contention after Saturday night, which that's a real possibility. In the co-main event, welterweight slugger Mike Perry takes on grappling specialist Mickey Gall. Known for his incredible knockout power, Perry will attempt to get back on track after 2 losses in a row at 1-3 resume in his past 4 fights. Meanwhile, Gall is coming off a win over Salem Tahari from August 2019. One fight recently removed from the card is women's bantamweight bout between Aspen Ladd and Sarah McMahon. Oh no, the bout was scrapped after Ladd suffered a knee injury in that forced her out of the fight, and a replacement fighter could not be secured for McMahon. The main card for the UFC on ESPN 12 kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, with this card being simulcasted on ESPN and ESPN Plus. Prelims start at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'm going to announce all the fights here. So we got Dustin Porier versus Dan Hooker, Mike Perry versus Mickey Gall. Also, I'll talk about these fights. I'll announce these fights, and then I'll give you my opinion who I think is going to win. Porier versus Dan Hooker. I say Dan Hooker's going to win that. Mike Perry versus Mickey Gall. Brendan Allen versus Kyle Dukas. Kyle Dukas is going to win that. Jillian Vellante versus Maurice Green. That's going to be a fun fight. I'd say that'll be the second best fight of the entire night. Vellante? I go for Vellante. Luis Pena versus Kama Worthy. Pena versus Worthy. My heart says Pena, but I'm kind of in disagreement with that. Worthy. I'll go for Worthy that. Mara Barella versus Miranda Maverick. That's a Barella's win right there. Philip Lins versus Tanner Bozer. Bozer wins that. Sean Wisdom versus Kyle Nelson. Takashi Soto versus Ramiz Baramaj. Soto's going to win that one. Jean Ufray against Kay Hansen. K? I'll put money on K there. Jordan Griffin versus Yusuf Zalal. And Zalal is going to go win that matchup right there. It's a really fun card. Really fun one. And so, it's mentioned here that Porier is coming back after his fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. There was a new MMA Off Point video that talked about how close Porier was into being the lightweight champion. There was one instance in this fight where he could have synced in a guillotine choke onto Khabib, but he didn't pull guard on there, which gave Khabib enough time to recover and was able to go to some ground and pounding. I feel bad for Dustin Porier. And here's Porier is definitely going to come into this fight against Dan Hooker as the underdog. I can guarantee you that. I really can. Or if Porier does come into this fight as the favorite here, then people are underrating how good of a fighter Dan Hooker is. Really, I'm being that honest with you. I expect this could be either a slug. This either can be a slugfest where Porier might win this, or Hooker wins after 3 rounds of action. I'll go for that. Good news though, Khabib Nurmagomedov. It is being reported that his father does not have coronavirus. So there's some good news over there from his fight camp. So this is being reported in by multiple sources, but I'm going to read this thing from MMAJunkie.usatoday.com. Khabib Nurmagomedov gives update. Father COVID free, but condition is still serious. Despite being COVID-19 free, his dad is still in intensive care, says his son, UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov. Every day, Khabib visits his dad, who remains hooked up to machines and cannot verbalize. In a recent interview with Channel 1 Russia, the younger Nurmagomedov gave an update on his father's health. Now, father's condition is still serious. He's in intensive care, Nurmagomedov said. The coronavirus is gone, but the infection has left consequences on the kidneys and on the heart. Now, the virus is gone. I come to the hospital, he recognized me, but there is no verbal communication, because he is under the hospital devices. Every day I visit him for half an hour, hold his hand, talk, he gestures to understand that he recognizes me. Even though his dad's condition is serious, Khabib says he's confident the doctor's care will nurse his father back to health through a challenging rehabilitation program. I am sure of the doctors. They are one of the best in the world. I have no doubt, Khabib said. Thanks so much for everything they do. In this regard, everything's very good. It just takes time, because the consequences are very difficult, and the rehabilitation period will be difficult and long. While the elder Nurmagomedov, 57, he's like 57, still really young, begins his road to recovery, Khabib is beginning preparations for his octagon return. September is less than 3 months away. That's when Nurmagomedov is expected to defend his UFC lightweight title against Justin Gaethje. He continues to train because this is what his father and lifelong coach wants. I prepare, train every day because I know that my father would like me to be in good shape. My father would definitely not like that because of him I miss training, of which I am sure. Training helps me relieve stress and distract from everything. We'll go back in the autumn and defend our title. His father was first hospitalized in Dagestan in late April after experiencing what was, at the time, believed to be pneumonia. He was later transferred to the military hospital in Moscow once his condition worsened. In mid-May, it was reported that Nurmagomedov woke up from a medically induced coma after complications from pneumonia led to heart surgery at a military hospital in Moscow. Days later, Russian media outlet RT reported that his father was again in a coma on life supports. He was being treated after undergoing a heart bypass operation, according to the reports. On June 9th, Khabib's manager revealed that his father has opened his eyes and was responding, which was the last update before Monday's news. So hopefully his father goes well for himself. If you guys don't keep up with Khabib, he's very passionate, and he has a very unique relationship with his father. Very unique one, where he's constantly giving him praise. I don't remember a single interview. He talks about his mom very sparingly. I remember he did an interview in Dagestan where it was him in a gymnasium, and he's talking to a bunch of kids. And one kid was able to ask him a question about his mom, and the way how Khabib asks, the way how Khabib responds to it, like his viewpoint on his mom is like very different from his father. Because the way how he views his mom is based around like, okay, so she's the caretaker and she raised me into being a good person. And then he talks about his dad, whereas like, oh, my dad is this person who's pushing me to excel myself to the next level. It's very strange. Like he doesn't talk about his mom at all in the present tense. It's more like, my mom was a great mother to me. She took care of me, and she was a good person, and she did everything she can to provide and support me. And then he goes and say, but my dad right now, currently, is this amazing person, and everyone should look up to the father. It's sad, really. It really is sad that his father's going through this, especially, on Father's Day. So hopefully things can go well for Khabib Nurmagomedov. It was announced several months ago, like a handful of months ago, that he said that he was expecting a return on September, and now we can expect him to have his return match against Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. I would have never guessed that fight happening last year. I really wouldn't. I thought this year we were going to see the return of Conor McGregor. We were going to see Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. I thought if the fight was close, we would see maybe Khabib and Ferguson too. That's honestly what I was predicting just about a year ago. But now we're going to see Justin Gaethje against Khabib Nurmagomedov, and it's a very unique fight here because Justin Gaethje obviously can wrestle. He's a really impressive, really great wrestler. He's got great wrestling background and pedigree. He just never wrestles. There's a recent interview that Justin Gaethje was talking about why does he wrestle, even though he's got this wrestling background. He is a wrestler turned boxer, but he just sticks primarily towards boxing. And someone asked him, that's like, hey, why aren't you doing some wrestling? I mean, you're a good wrestler. And Justin Gaethje says, well, even though I can wrestle, I don't use it because it's really tiring. And I remember there was another press conference where they had Justin Gaethje. He was talking to the camera, and when the cameraman told him, hey, Gaethje, what's your experience like being a wrestler? And then Justin Gaethje said, oh man, it was like one of the most like hardest experiences I've ever undergone. Good thing I'm never dealing with that ever again. Whew! So Justin Gaethje has a weird relationship with wrestling, but he is a great wrestler, and he can wrestle with Khabib. So will he wrestle with Khabib? Well, he kind of has to if he's going to fight him. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we are back. In just 5 days from now, we could see Dan Hooker versus Dustin Porier, and what could easily be one of the best fights of the entire year. I'm excited for it. I hope you're excited for it. And we'll end off today's podcast with something a wee bit silly. Typically, in the world of UFC, in the world of mixed martial arts, everything is very over dramatic. We got some divas out there. We got a lot of trash talking happening via Twitter. Well, I kind of would like it if there was, a Rich Franklin in current MMA right now. Because right now, all the fighters are trying to come across as almost, they're kind of blending in the same way. One of my friends talked about this, where he says that a lot of these fighters feel the same.
And what I mean feel the same, it's that if I were to pull out like Ben Askren, Chael Sonnen, and Colby Covington, like to an extent, they're all the same fighter. Not really. Like once you expand upon them, like they're actually very different. But in terms of how they try to promote themselves and present themselves, they're very similar. And one might say, well, they're promoting their fight, they're promoting their brand, they're promoting themselves the right way. The right way? Like, do you know how many fighters do the exact same thing that they do? They just do a little bit more better, but for the most part, I would like to have a UFC fighter who's a wee bit wholesome for once. It just frustrates me. It frustrates me that all these fighters talk a big game. They talk a big game, but yet they don't even have titles. It just bugs the heck out of me that once you do have the title, you become kind of lazy, or you start straying away from your own identity or personality when you didn't have the belt. Like, Kamaru Usman was a very quiet guy before he won the belt. Yes, he did that one thing where we talked about how he had 30% energy that one time, and he had 70% energy left. That was ridiculous. That was the beginning of when Kamaru Usman started becoming like a character than himself. So I keep saying that, I would like a wholesome, like virtuous, like a paragon in the world of mixed martial arts in the UFC. And that's why I got a quiz for you guys. If you guys were in the UFC, what type of fighter would you be? I got this quiz coming in from ProSportsQuiz.com. The title is called Which UFC Fighter Are You? 2020 Quiz. Have you ever wondered which UFC fighter are you most like? If so, you have come to the right place. We have put together a personality quiz for you to find out the fighter that you personality-wise matches. The options include some of the top fighters in the world. World is capitalized in this text, including John Jones, Conor McGregor, Daniel Cormier, and many more. I want to know the many more because typically, whenever I take these quizzes, it's like I'm always Conor McGregor. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know what I'm saying or what I'm putting down exactly to make myself Conor McGregor. Every time I take these quizzes, I'm always Conor McGregor, which bothers me because everybody nowadays IRL is trying to be like Conor McGregor. Like, I hate Alexander Hernandez because he tries way too hard to being like Conor McGregor when he should just be himself and just focus on trying to be the best fighter he can be. Ugh. It says, which UFC fighter are you? All you have to do is answer the questions below about yourself, and our quiz will let you know the UFC fighter that you most closely resemble. Note, this is based on a point system, so there are some rare cases where you could get more than one fighter. This is because you showed signs of resembling both of them according to the point system. Alright then. Judges' point system is kind of BS. Let's figure out the point system here for ProSportsQuiz.com. You can go play along with me. Once again, this is at ProSportsQuiz.com. You can type in which UFC fighter are you. First question. What is your favorite type of fighter to watch? A dominant wrestler? A submission specialist? An entertaining striker? One good shot and it is over? Or other? Again, I don't know. What is other? What is the... Okay, so if you're not a wrestler, you're not a submission specialist, you're not a fun striker to watch, you're not a good knockout artist, then what are you then? Like, what other option could there be? Like, a clinch specialist? That to me is entertaining striking. Would other mean like, oh, you're a boring boxer? That's my favorite type of fighter to watch. My favorite type of fighter to watch is Tyron Woodley when he was champion fighting against Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. Yeah, let's go for that. Okay, honest answer here, an entertaining striker. Zabit Mershobov, it has to be my favorite fighter right now in the world of mixed martial arts. Even though I just butchered his last name, I love his fighting style. It's so fun. He's like Kung Fu Abraham Lincoln. How much trash talking do you do? I talk trash all day, every day, or only if I hate my opponent, or I don't talk trash and always respect my opponent. I trash talk all the time. But here's the thing, when I trash talk, so I'm very competitive. I used to do community basketball, boxing sometimes. And usually when I play with my friends, my friends, like, they're into like board games and stuff. So I'll play board games with them, and I'm like super competitive. If I have friends who go to the gym, I'm super competitive with them. But yeah, I trash talk all day, every day. I do. What drives you the most in your life? Family, money, winning, my desire to improve, or fame. A lot of these can just go over the same bucket here. You can win but not make too much money. you can make a whole lot of money and then be like psychologically, ugh. Like once I always keep bringing my friends here who are engineers in Silicon Valley, but they make $300K a year, and they're like the most socially awkward people ever. I'm being honest with you. It's like they just don't know how to interact with somebody in a romantic relationship. They're just so awkward and so confusing, despite what their bank account says. Their bank account says they're a hardworking person who will do anything it takes to achieve. But then when it comes to actual sexual interaction, they're freaking awkward as all heck. What drives you the most in my life? My desire to improve. My desire to improve, because your desire to improve can blend in, and it can grant you both money, winning, fame, and also it can help out your family life. Choose what best describes you. Are you cocky, intimidating, respectful, a natural talent, role model, or anti-establishment? If you pick anti-establishment, then you're probably that one weird kid in high school that genuinely thinks that they're being different from everyone else because they're wearing black, but even though all the other kids are wearing black. I am cocky. I can 100% say that. When I'm in a really cocky mood, I'm that cocky. But I'm also respectful at the same time. Okay, if I'm really into the groove, if I'm really committed to a competitive activity, I'm definitely cocky. What would you say is your biggest flaw? I sometimes party too much, not at my age. I sometimes let my emotions get the best of me. But I let my emotions get the best of me during in my own privacy, alright? I don't take many risks. I do. My cardio sucks. Yes, my cardio does indeed suck, but it's been improving. I swear a lot. Yes, I do swear a lot. No. In the most recent one, I've been making up words. Alright, so the older I get, the more I realize how boring it is to swear a lot. And so to make things a little bit more interesting, I would replace certain words or certain letters in words to make it be more humorous. So if I were to say it in a public setting, people won't be offended by it. I also say, what's that one word from Battlestar Galactica? Oh yeah, frack. What the frack is happening here, yo? I'll say something like that, where it sounds so ridiculous and lame and stuff. There's no way anyone can be offended by that. My cardio does suck. That is my biggest flaw. I am a heavyweight that should be a light heavyweight. I'll go for my cardio sucks as my biggest flaw. And I'm Conor McGregor. As usual, I take these quizzes all the time, and I end up being Conor McGregor. Okay, so I'm gonna retake this quiz again. I'll do a real blitz run over here, but I'm gonna choose all the worst answers possible. Okay, what is your favorite type of fighter to watch? I love watching two guys staring at each other across the octagon. I don't know, touching each other's feet. Yeah, that's what I want to see in a fight. How much trash talking do you do? I don't talk trash. I always respect my opponents. Even if they are annoying, I will always respect them, totally. What drives you the most in your life? Winning. I hate... No. Fame. I'm a complete clout chaser like some of my friends are on Instagram. Choose what best describes you. Cocky, intimidating, respectful, natural talent, role model. I hate people who call themselves role models. If they really are not. Anti-establishment and role model have to be the two worst options here. I don't like anyone who tries to be a role model. They should always be themselves, and they just so happen to be a role model, and good for them. But no one should ever try to be a role model. And no one should ever try to be anti-establishment. It's you should, because that's called just being a contrarian. If you just happen to be an anti-establishment person, okay, but if you try to be it, I go for anti-establishment just because there's a lot of people in my personal life I don't like who try to be anti-establishment, but they really are not. So that bothers me. What would you say is your biggest flaw? What's the worst option here, guys? Alright. I sometimes party too much. That's not really a bad thing, really. The way how I view it in my life, not that bad. I sometimes let my emotions get the best of me. That's a maybe. I don't take many risks. My cardio sucks. I swear a lot. None of the above. I have no flaws. I am a perfect human being. I am Brian Ortega. Okay, guys. So here's the thing. If you have no flaws. None. If you are the perfect humanitarian and you don't enjoy wrestling and you don't enjoy submission grappling, and you don't enjoy fun striking, and you got no flaws, but you're also anti-establishments, you're Brian Ortega. What the heck? How does that make any sense? What about Brian Ortega makes him anti-establishment? Why? Because he grew up in the ghettos? That doesn't make you anti-establishment at all. It doesn't. And he is an interesting, like, have you seen Brian Ortega's like fights? Like, his fight against Max Holloway was one of my favorite fights of all time. It was great. The guy's a warrior. He's a beast. He's an amazing, he's one of the best submission grapplers right now in the UFC. He's a great wrestler. He's an entertaining striker. How the heck? And what? No flaws. If you have no flaws, you're Brian Ortega. That's not a jab on Brian Ortega, but he has flaws. He definitely does. No human is perfect. But why specifically his name? That is ridiculous. Alright, okay, I'll do this one more time very quickly here. What is your favorite... Okay, I'll answer the same exact way. Favorite type of fighter to watch? Other. And I don't talk trash and always respect my opponents. Alright then, I swear Brian Ortega has talked trash at least once. What drives you most in my family? Desire to... Well, I want to say Brian Ortega wanted fame. Because if you follow him right now on social media, he doesn't, like, glorify it at all. Fame. Choose what best describes you. Anti-establishment, because that's Brian Ortega. Okay, so we're at the final question here. What would you say is your biggest flaw? If having no flaws made you Brian Ortega, what would happen if you swore a lot? Nate Diaz. Besides, when did swearing a lot was considered a negative flaw? So are you telling me that both Nate Diaz and Brian Ortega are the exact same person, except Nate Diaz swears more? But other than that, though, they're the exact same person? Yeah, sure. Let's roll with that. Totally. Alright. This quiz is insanely funny. I really thought... Here's the problem with these personality quizzes. You can't... The same thing also applies towards, like, Harry Potter. A lot of my friends are Harry Potter nerds. And I'm sorry for getting kind of geeky here with, like, since this is a mixed martial arts podcast here. But I still have never found a single good personality quiz out there that actually details out, like, because these fighters are very interesting fighters. They really are. If you follow, like, any of their countdowns or any of their vlogs, they're very funny, interesting fighters out there. They're not one-dimensional as these personality quizzes place it at. Nate Diaz and Brian Ortega are two very, very different people. Even though Ortega and Nate Diaz both have, like, a background in jiu-jitsu, and that they're both really good submission fighters, and they have underrated boxing, I'll go at that end there. But you can't just say Brian Ortega having no flaws makes him, while Nate Diaz having the flaw of swearing a lot. Oh man, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. It makes no sense. And I take pride knowing that I just took part in this quiz. Hopefully you guys can take part of this quiz also. And who knows what type of fighter you might be. Through just these 5 questions, you yourself can envision yourself as a mixed martial artist competing at the UFC. I'm apparently the next Conor McGregor. That's me. I wouldn't have thought that. I'm from the Philippines. Actually, I'm from Abu Dhabi. I'm a Filipino, and I'm compared to an Irishman. I would have never, ever guessed that. But that does it for today's podcast here. I gotta say thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us a lot. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.